All right, this is my dad. He was on the City of Cincinnati's fire department. Tell us about your background in the fire service.
So I was on the fire department for 25 years, 20 years as a lieutenant, and the last 18 spent at Heavy Rescue 14. I was the lieutenant on Unit 1 for the hazmat team and for the Heavy Rescue.
All right. So I filled you in a little bit on what's going on with the City of Fairfield and how they denied their SAFER grant. Do you think rejecting the SAFER grant is a smart thing to do for a city or a fire department?
So in that particular case, I think that the City of Fairfield most likely took a look at their finances and their revenue that was needed to come in order to pay for hiring 6 new employees, and were dependent on whether or not the vote came through for the continued ability to pay for the people that were hired. So in those terms, yes, I would say that fiscally that was responsible of the city. If you accept that 1.26 million and are no longer able to pay for those employees and are forced to lay them off, then at some point you're going to have to pay back the 1.26 million and lay off those people. So that could be a very cost issue for them.
So do you think it's beneficial to staff part-time employees, or do you think it'd be more beneficial to staff a full-time fire department like the City of Cincinnati's?
So I only worked on the City of Cincinnati, but I know a lot of guys that worked part-time on their off-day jobs or worked part-time for prior to coming onto the city. So with that said, my experience has been a full-time fire department with a 4-person minimum manning on every apparatus, which was fantastic for having that manpower available, knowing that you have 2 people that are able to go in and 2 people that were ready to back you up, even if you just had one engine company show up at the scene to start. So having that manpower is really important for safety of the firefighters. On the flip side of that, I see the benefit of having some part-time positions. Some of the advantages would be not having to pay all the benefit packages that you would for a full-time employee. It gives some people that are younger an opportunity to get their feet wet in a department before taking on a full-time position. And if at some point you want to pick up, 24-hour shift on your off day, you can go to work for another fire department and you kind of supplement your income if you needed to. So for firefighters, I can see an advantage of part-time position, and I can see an advantage and disadvantage for a municipality.
Do you think rejecting the SAFER grant, how do you think it'll affect the City of Fairfield and its fire department?
Well, had they taken the grant, they would have had 6 employees, 6 more full-time employees, which they would have been able to fully staff their entire battalion. So by not accepting that, they're going to have to either fill those with more part-time people, or they're going to have to eventually hire full-time people out of their own pocket.
Or brown it out like it is.
So we went through brownouts in the City of Cincinnati. They had no overtime budget, and we ended up browning out companies for I want to say a year and a half. It was a long time. we would take a company out of service, and those 4 people would be dispersed over the city. And I think we went up to, I want to say 3 or 4 companies every day that were browned out for a long period of time. Eventually, we were able to get the funding to be able to hire enough classes to cover the manpower, and eventually we've gotten out of the brownouts. But that was during the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, and a lot of municipalities were having financial troubles during that time. So yes, it was a hit for us and for many departments. We were able to step up to the plate and take the hits, but thank goodness now we're no longer in those type of financial situations. Unfortunately, there are a lot of smaller departments that are still struggling to pay for full manning, or a 4-man minimum manning for all companies. So,
do you have any other staffing issues throughout the 25 years of service on the city of Cincinnati?
So the only other staffing issues were qualified members, making sure that we had enough paramedics to be able to staff the medic units. We have had issues with retirements. You have to look back in time and realize that there was a deficiency in during the 70s, where there was a huge time period where they weren't hiring. And so when come the 80s, they started hiring these huge classes. When those classes came time to retire, then we had a lot of people going out, which meant we had a lot of overtime. It costs a lot of money to put on a class. Cincinnati does their own firefighter classes, and they do their own in-house EMT class, inspector class, hazmat class,
Paramedic.
Yeah, and paramedic. So it costs a lot, and it takes a lot to put on class, and it costs a lot to hire people on. So when we went through all those retirements, we had a lot of overtime. We had, I think we were into 20 or 30 overtimes every single day, and that can get really expensive. So, yeah, so there were times when we were shorthanded. And when I first came on, we didn't have minimum manning, so it was called the 80-20 rule. So 80% had to be at 4 men per company, and then 20% could ride with 3 men. So there was a lot of times when I was on a company that we only had 3 people. So when you go to a fire and you send one to the hydrant, and the FAO is, setting up the pump and getting everything ready, then your officer was by himself advancing a line. Now, obviously, we don't do that anymore, and hopefully nobody sends somebody into a burning building by themselves with a hose line, but we did do that for a lot of years. So, any other questions?
Did you guys have any run-ins with SAFER grants?
Yes, we've actually taken quite a few SAFERs. I think we were on 6 SAFER grants. That's a guess. But yeah, we have had quite a few, and we also have one that was offered to us that we didn't refuse. We just weren't able to comply with all the requirements at that particular time. So the SAFER has all these criteria that are the responsibility of whatever the municipality is that they have to satisfy in order for them to qualify for the SAFER grant. We weren't able to do that at that particular time. You have to know how many people are retiring, how many people are projected to retire, and we weren't able to have those numbers and satisfy all the criteria. So we did not refuse one, but we weren't able to comply with one. So, but after that, we've had several safer grants that we've been able to utilize. So, and it's been a good thing for Cincinnati Fire Department. It's been able to increase manpower, although I think we still are in overtime almost every day. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you for your time.